What would make Elvis Presley, the king of rock and roll, lose his cool on stage in front of thousands? It's hard to imagine the calm, magnetic performer letting his emotions spill over under the spotlight. But on one unforgettable night in Las Vegas, that's exactly what happened. Tonight, we're diving into a night when Elvis, who had always kept his struggles behind the curtain, couldn't hold back his frustrations any longer. It all unraveled before an audience who never saw it coming. As we piece together the story, we'll pull back the layers of personal struggles and professional pressures that built into a relentless pressure cooker of fame. A single moment broke it all open, revealing a side of Elvis that fans, friends, and even his closest confidants rarely saw. What could have sparked such an explosive reaction from a performer known for his charm and poise? Stay tuned as we explore this rare glimpse behind the legend and into the very human struggles he tried so hard to keep hidden. Number 5. Background setup. The King Under Pressure. In the early 1970s, Elvis Presley's Las Vegas residency at the Hilton was legendary, but it came at a steep personal cost. Performing show after show, sometimes twice a day, he was always in the spotlight, a tireless entertainer committed to thrilling his audiences. This relentless schedule, though, wore on him, physically and mentally. It was a demand unlike anything he'd ever experienced before, a ceaseless grind that would challenge even the strongest performers. Every night, he poured his heart and energy onto that stage, yet beneath the dazzling lights and standing ovations, something was starting to crack. Outside of his performances, rumors about Elvis's well-being were swirling like wildfire. Whispers of health issues and allegations of drug use became tabloid staples, feeding a media frenzy that seemed impossible to escape. Reporters speculated about his personal life and painted a troubling picture of a rock and roll icon struggling to maintain his footing. These rumors followed him everywhere, adding to the pressure he felt both on and off stage. Fans expected the Elvis of the 1950s, the icon with unshakable charisma and boundless energy, and he was desperate to live up to that. But as the rumors grew louder, so did his internal struggles, and he found himself trying to hold up an image that felt increasingly out of reach. Among those closest to him was his longtime friend Jerry Schilling, who watched Elvis cope with the immense pressure of his career. Jerry saw the toll it took, describing how Elvis, normally calm and controlled, seemed different on the night of this particular show. He wasn't himself that night, Jerry later recalled. The pressure was building up. Jerry's words captured the essence of what was happening beneath Elvis's polished exterior, a mix of frustration, fatigue, and vulnerability that would soon culminate in an unforgettable, explosive moment. Number 4. Building tension, a glimpse into his mind. As the hours counted down before showtime, Elvis Presley was facing a battle few could see. For years, he had managed to hide the weight of his struggles behind the powerful, magnetic performer the world adored. But, as his girlfriend at the time, Linda Thompson, would later reflect, people saw the entertainer, but they didn't understand the man. She witnessed the way he carried the expectations of millions like a heavy cloak, always determined to keep his struggles invisible, concealed beneath his fame. Behind the legendary smile and effortless charm, he was carrying a quieter, more solitary weight, one few truly understood. Elvis's patience, however, was beginning to fray. The endless cycle of rumors seemed to shadow him, creeping into every aspect of his life. His name was splashed across headlines in stories that seemed increasingly invasive, questioning his health, his lifestyle, and even his ability to keep going. The relentless noise of the press felt like a constant hum that was getting louder with each passing day, making it hard for him to stay focused on the one place he had always felt free: the stage. Each time he stepped out under the lights, he knew he was expected to be flawless, to be Elvis, the legend who could do no wrong. but the distractions were becoming harder to ignore, chipping away at the calm he tried so hard to maintain. And on this particular night, things felt different. Elvis was emotionally exhausted, pushed closer to his breaking point than ever before. Those closest to him sensed the tension that radiated off him, a kind of restlessness and fatigue that even he couldn't quite hide. It was as though he was a coil wound too tightly, ready to snap under the strain. This was not just another performance. There was an unmistakable weight in the air, a tension that hinted at something brewing beneath the surface. The audience was expecting a show, but what they would get was a glimpse of the man behind the music, the frustration and exhaustion he had kept locked away finally slipping through. This night would be unlike any other, and Elvis himself may have sensed that the moment was coming when his emotions would break free. Number 3. The incident unfolds, the heckler and the explosion. As the show reached its midpoint, the crowd was fully engaged, captivated by Elvis's charisma and energy. Yet amidst the applause and cheers, a lone voice cut through, breaking the spell with an intrusive, jarring comment. A heckler in the audience shouted out something sharp and accusatory, making a crude remark about Elvis's rumored drug use, a rumor that had plagued him relentlessly in the press. It was a comment laced with judgment, feeding into the tabloid narrative that Elvis was struggling with substances behind the scenes. Normally, Elvis would have brushed it off with grace or a quick joke. But tonight, that single remark seemed to pierce through him, landing in a way that others hadn't. Without hesitation, Elvis turned towards the source of the interruption, his eyes narrowed with a mix of anger and pain. In a voice that echoed through the stunned silence, he called out the heckler directly, breaking his usual cool demeanor. "You don't have any respect for me as a person." His tone was firm, almost biting, a stark contrast to the relaxed, charming Elvis his fans were used to. The air thickened as he continued, addressing not only the heckler but the entire crowd, unleashing his frustrations in a moment of raw honesty. His voice, filled with an unfiltered vulnerability, cut deeper as he added, "You people don't know what I've gone through." It was a rare admission of his personal struggles, words that echoed far beyond the four walls of the showroom. The audience, taken aback, sat in silence. This wasn't the polished icon they had come to see. This was a man bearing his wounds in front of them. Fans exchanged glances, processing the shock of seeing their idol, usually untouchable, reveal the emotional toll he was carrying. It was as if, for a brief moment, the king of rock and roll had pulled back the curtain on his own humanity. Some felt an aching sympathy, understanding that they were witnessing the burden he bore to keep them entertained. For others, it was unsettling to see Elvis in this vulnerable state. But for everyone in the room, it was a moment they'd never forget. A raw, unscripted glimpse into the struggles of a man who, for all his fame, was still only human. Number 2. Aftermath and reflections. After the show, Elvis retreated backstage, where Linda Thompson, his girlfriend at the time, found him. She recalled how his emotions were still raw, a strange mix of regret and relief flickering across his face. He knew he had stepped out of character, letting his frustrations spill onto the stage in a way he rarely allowed. Part of him regretted letting the audience see that side of him, exposing his inner battles in a moment meant for entertainment. But there was also a sense of relief. In that unplanned outburst, he had finally vented some of the pressure that had been building for months, possibly even years. For once, he hadn't bottled up his feelings behind his signature smile. He had let the world see that, despite his fame, he was vulnerable, something he both feared and perhaps needed. Jerry Schilling, one of Elvis's closest friends, understood this struggle better than most. He had seen firsthand the weight Elvis carried daily, from the constant demands of fame to his inner battles that no amount of applause could alleviate. Jerry later spoke about the immense pressure his friend was under, noting that while Elvis lived for the stage, the harsh spotlight often amplified his pain. It wasn't just about performing, Jerry explained. It was about living up to an image, an expectation that Elvis felt he could never escape. The public saw Elvis as an icon, but those closest to him saw a man who was haunted by insecurities, a man whose life was dominated by the struggle to balance his personal identity with his superstar persona. That night wasn't the only time his frustrations would surface. 2 years later, in July 1975, during a performance in Asheville, North Carolina, Elvis's perfectionist side led to another glimpse of his inner turmoil. When the band missed a beat during "And I Love You So," Elvis stopped the song and addressed them, his frustration evident as he urged his musicians to meet his exacting standards. For Elvis, performing was serious business. Every note and every beat mattered. These occasional outbursts weren't just anger, but a reflection of the immense pressure he placed on himself. They revealed the high expectations he held for his art and the toll it took on him when things didn't go as planned. Through these moments, audiences witnessed a man fighting to keep control in a world that often felt overwhelmingly out of reach. Number 1. The man behind the legend, a cry for understanding. Behind the glitz, glamour, and larger-than-life performances, Elvis Presley was still just a man, one burdened by immense pressure, endless scrutiny, and expectations so high they seemed impossible to meet. While fans saw the magnetic entertainer, the man who set the stage on fire with every performance, few could truly grasp the weight he carried behind the scenes. Living in a relentless spotlight meant that every move, every word, every glance was dissected, judged, and often misunderstood. It was a life where privacy was a luxury he could barely afford, where vulnerability was seen as a flaw, and where the line between the icon and the individual became increasingly blurred. For Elvis, who always aimed to give everything he had to his fans, the pressure to constantly live up to his public persona took an exhausting toll. These rare moments of outburst weren't merely lapses in patience. They were raw expressions of a man fighting battles the world rarely saw. Each angry word, each flash of frustration revealed a glimpse into the struggles he could never fully articulate. Fame had brought him adoration, but it had also created a cage, trapping him in a life that demanded perfection and gave no room for human frailty. In those tense moments, like the one in Las Vegas or Asheville, his fans witnessed something deeper than a performer's annoyance. They saw a person struggling against the weight of his own image, grappling with the pressures of a world that expected him to always be Elvis, the king. His outbursts became a language of their own, silent pleas for understanding in a world that wanted only the legend and not the man. This was Elvis Presley. A legend, yes, but also a man who, even in his most private struggles, could not escape the stage's unyielding spotlight. The audience may have only glimpsed his frustration, but those fleeting moments were filled with a lifetime's worth of pain and resilience. In every pause and every heated word, he revealed that even the most iconic figures are not immune to the human experience. He was proof that beneath the fame and talent was a man whose moments of frustration and vulnerability connected him to us all, making his legacy as much about his humanity as it was about his music. We'd love to hear your thoughts. What do you think about this side of Elvis, the moments when the pressures of fame broke through? Do you see these outbursts as glimpses into his humanity, or do they reveal something else about the legend we all know and love? Share your thoughts and opinions in the comments section below. We're excited to read what you have to say.